What do Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, many world leaders, food and pharmaceutical companies, including Coca-Cola and Pfizer, have in common? It's a sinister and evil agenda being unveiled right before our eyes. Let's go. This is Stephanie, and this is Truth Detective. I am your very own Truth Detective, finding out the facts and evidence and giving you the research on society, culture, U.S. news, world news, our justice system, corruption, and so much more. No topic is off limits at Truth Detective. Before I begin this episode officially, I want to thank my first-time listeners here at Truth Detective. I hope you enjoyed this episode. You can go to truthdetectivepodcast.com to listen to my past episodes. And there's a little bio on me if you're wondering what I'm all about. I also want to let you know that my evidence-based, informative, investigative research is not complete or comprehensive. I leave that up to you. If I am talking about a topic that you love, that's great, and I want that for you. The deep dive is well worth it. I get you started with the links in the show notes that I use for this episode, and then go down that rabbit hole and find out more. You know, this is a subject that I could be researching, or you could be researching for many, many years and still not get the complete story about the World Economic Forum. What is that? In this episode, I hope that you are able to see how the World Economic Forum has their tentacles in everything that you do now and will do in the future, if we don't stop it by putting those unelected elites and bureaucrats in charge of the World Economic Forum to a stop. It will get out of control and there will be no turning back. It will be hard to come back from what they are trying to accomplish. Well, Klaus Schwab founded the World Economic Forum in 1971. Although there is not a lot of information about Klaus Schwab, it is said his father was an intimate confidant of Hitler. The industrialist and fascist Eugene Schwab was a socialist at heart. And of course, Klaus Schwab followed in his father's footsteps as he grew up. Let's first dive into a small description of what the World Economic Forum says on their own website and their belief system. So what they believe is a plocracy. It is a word that is not much used right now, but it is a government run by many rulers globally for the same goal. The same type of government system from all countries within the WEF, which means universal governance. All people in Western countries are treated the same way and need the same necessities to live, but aren't necessarily given those necessities to live. They want to destroy the old system. And what is the old system? This is a system that we have right now. This is a system that we are slowly losing. The system that lifted people out of poverty with oil and gas and nuclear energy, stopping fossil fuels that do and will lift people out of poverty and has done so for the last 100 years. That is what they want to stop. But if you were to look at the World Economic Forum's website, it does at first look innocent enough. You may even say they have our best interests at heart. That's when heavy research from you comes into play on an individual level. I believe that my last video, I did show you the World Economic Forum's website and all the things that you can find out about artificial intelligence, climate change, cybersecurity, education, skills and learning, the metaverse, workforce and employment, blockchain, diversity and inclusion, circular economy, energy, mobility. There is a lot there. They even have a podcast. So go on the weforum.org website. I will leave the link in the show notes if you want to watch videos and read articles about all their concerns. From the website, take down the WEF.com. It says here, The World Economic Forum is an unaccountable, non-governmental organization that convenes meetings of world leaders, globalist elites, traditional media leaders, and medical analysts, and social media moguls. Global elitists meet yearly in Davos, Switzerland, with a view to impacting policy decisions on behalf of its members, predominantly multinational corporations and politicians. The group has been criticized for its stated aims of transforming or resetting global society for the benefit of private corporations rather than the public. Schwab himself has argued governments are no longer the overwhelmingly dominant actors on the world stage, and the time has come for a new stakeholder paradigm of international governance. The World Economic Forum is unaccountable for the general public, despite steering high-level dialogues which affect policy changes that directly impact your life. The World Economic Forum has a governance board that is almost entirely constituted of corporate actors with conflicts of interest against the citizens of many countries. And the World Economic Forum states the goals of improving the state of the world. But is the World Economic Forum actually doing that? It doesn't look so. Here, the group of global elites are untransparent. The World Economic Forum does not publicly disclose its finances, despite pulling from public resources for its events and asserting public policy that influences the world over. In fact, Switzerland's public broadcaster revealed that while the World Economic Forum has several $100 million on hand, the entity pays no federal taxes and bizarrely enjoys the same charitable status as groups like the International Red Cross. How about anti-sovereignty? The sovereign state has become obsolete, founder Klaus Schwab told reporters from Forbes magazine in 1999. Since then, the World Economic Forum has hosted a number of programs and events specifically aimed at the destruction of national governments. The Transnational Institute concluded in 2016, gatherings such as Davos are not laughable billionaire playgrounds, but rather the future of global governance. It is nothing less than a silent global coup d'etat, which means they want to take over a handful of Western countries with the same universal governance. These sections of the World Economic Forum affect you, me, and everybody. Perhaps, maybe, I'll leave it up to you, in nefarious ways that we can't imagine, only because this type of rule has never happened in America and Western countries. I often hear skeptics of governmental control, especially lately, from my acquaintances, friends, and family say governments are for the people. And yes, I hear, Stephanie, the World Economic Forum wouldn't make nefarious, deceptive, or underhanded rules and laws against citizens, right? And I say, no, you wouldn't make nefarious rules, regulations, and mandates. And I say that because for the most part, we are brought up to believe people at the core are good and loving, helpful and caring. This is true for all of us. In America, prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, we knew that that was truly who we were, a trait that separated us from all other countries, and that includes the monocultures such as China. And while in the throes of the pandemic, our most vulnerable Americans were cajoled and controlled into believing what we were told by those government officials and private and public corporations that we trusted for so many years that we must obey whatever is said. The pandemic has brought us to this point right now, of fear and confusion, chaos and uncertainty. It is my opinion as a podcaster, a researcher, and a seeker of truth, this is a form of communism that will bring our country and the world to a halt as we know it. Yes, the World Economic Forum has an agenda that impacts us in a huge way. Here's Matt Walsh of The Matt Walsh Show from The Daily Wire, telling us what will happen if the World Economic Forum, globalists, elitists, and bureaucrats take charge.
You're relying on their benevolence to identify the parties who need the resources more and then deliver it. You're also relying on their perfect wisdom to know who deserves what. You are depending on them to have God's goodness and generosity and wisdom to go along with the godlike powers that they are wielding. And that faith is always 100% of the time misplaced. And this is why communism and socialism and all forms of governmental redistribution systems end in misery and catastrophe. They don't respect or understand nature. And that applies to external nature, the planet's nature, the nature comprised of trees and oceans and clouds. It also applies to internal nature, human nature. They respect and understand that least of all. They don't understand that human beings are fallen creatures. And so all of our institutions will be at some level broken and unreliable. And so we can't give absolute power to any institution. The institutions, they can't carry the weight of that sort of trust and faith. They also don't understand tendencies and trends and the ways in which historical trends can and should guide our expectations of the future. That's why they keep trying to, get socialism going again and again, because no matter how much misery it accounted for in the past, it's also why on the individual level, they think that we ought to continue releasing violent criminals back into our communities. Maybe they've changed. Maybe they've been reformed. But we have to make policies and decisions based on what is probable. As for economic systems, a common citizen advocating for governmental control is like jumping out of that window and hoping that you're the one guy who has a positive experience with it. On the other hand, for the powerful, for the elite, socialism is not a plunge at all. It's an elevation to even greater heights, enjoyed at the expense of all those peons still lingering at ground level, and who will soon end up lower even than that.
Bill Gates is a vigorous World Economic Forum member and a donator from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So what Bill really talks about is how we need to eliminate a portion of the population so that there isn't as much CO2 in the atmosphere. Here it is in his TED Talk back in 2010, Innovating to Zero. This is his solution.
Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero, and that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
So here again is his equation, and he is a proponent of depopulation. If you take the world population and then you take the services that each person uses and the energy that each person uses to get those services, you will come to that very own person's CO2 or carbon footprint, as it's called. To lower each person's carbon footprint, it would include eliminating some, if not most, of the people on the planet. That would get him to net zero, or close to it. Ouch, that's harsh. The World Economic Forum also talks about AI and robotics taking over the population as well. Listen to Yuval Noah Harari, author of Homo Deus, A Brief History of Tomorrow, as he speaks about the new useless class.
In the 21st century, the really big struggle will be against irrelevance. And it's much worse to be irrelevant than to be exploited. Those who fail in the struggle against irrelevance would constitute a new useless class. People who are useless, not from the viewpoint of their friends and family, of course, but useless from the viewpoint of the economic and political system. And this useless class will be separated by an ever-growing gap from the ever more powerful elite.
In that audio clip, Harari was making the case for artificial intelligence and how the middle class are going to become useless as we come into the age of artificial intelligence, as AI and robots take away jobs from you, me, and everybody, from all humans, especially in the working middle class. These are just a few examples of the World Economic Forum's evil agenda. The way we live and go about our daily lives have already been impacted significantly. Big changes are coming fast and furious regarding inflation, war, the countries that the United States interacts with, these nefarious and evil acts of horror and terror are being funded by some pretty well-known people. This includes the foundations such as the Clinton Foundation, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundations, and social media moguls such as Mark Zuckerberg and very influential world leaders from Europe, Asia, and beyond. We see from the World Economic Forum's website all the corporations that make products we all use and employ many individuals all over the world. That's on their agenda too, turning the world upside down, inside out, from every corner of your life. And let's not forget the racial divides, the transgender community, the suicides and mental health issues that are created, the critical race theory that indoctrinates our children. It's all having to do with the World Economic Forum. Chaos and confusion is what they are all about, taking their agenda from the Marxist communist playbooks of the past. Yes, as we do more research, we all can find out that the World Economic Forum has a strong communist agenda as its core principle. To make sure that the World Economic Forum has a lasting and unstopping impact to move forward with its mission, in 2004, the founder, Klaus Schwab, cobbled together the Forum of Young Global Leaders, a multi-stakeholder community of young leaders between the ages of 30 and 40 years old who share a commitment to shaping the global future. Also, in 2011, Klaus Schwab founded the Global Shapers Community, a global network of local hubs in cities around the world, bringing together young people between the ages of 20 and 30 who are exceptional in their potential, achievements, and drive to contribute to their communities. So if you think the World Economic Forum just happens in Davos, Switzerland, you better be prepared. It could be someone that you know, your next-door neighbor, or a person down the street, or someone that you are friendly with that could be involved with the World Economic Forum. We see from the World Economic Forum's website all the corporations that make products we all use. These corporations are giving huge funds of money to the World Economic Forum to further a global world agenda, to have dominance and control the world and you. Some of these corporations that have helped with the World Economic Forum's agenda are AARP, Amazon, Apple, AstraZeneca, CNBC Media, Coca-Cola, Google, Facebook, Bank of America, CNN, CVS Health, Honda Motors, IBM, Lego, LinkedIn, MasterCard, New York Times, Noom Weight Loss, Pepsi, Pfizer, Procter & Gamble, Ralph Lauren, TikTok, Tyson Foods, Toyota, Uber, Unilever, Verizon, Visa, Walmart, and Zoom, to name just a few. For right now, the World Economic Forum has been pushing really hard on the climate change agenda, which has been telling citizens for many, many years it is at an urgency level, hurting the planet. We are told to recycle, buy solar, buy electric vehicles, and reduce our carbon footprints if we want to save the planet before it's too late. Yes, sirree, we have until 2030 for all of us before it's just too late. The World Economic Forum wants to control everything. Farming and food shortages are no different. And the farmers and the people that enjoy the food that's produced on a farm are suffering. Listen here to Clayton Morris as he tells us a little more about it.
These globalists are morons, and they created a situation that gives these emerging, rising markets power like India, Brazil, Russia, the ultimate leverage. Guys, we are being used like pawns on a chessboard right now, and we can't let it happen. We are about to see massive food shortages and a total destruction of the American and European farming system. It's happening right now. Just ask any farmer what they're paying for seeds, what they're paying for energy, what they're paying for fertilizer, and it will astonish you.
Fertilizer is up 250% from what I was paying 2 years ago. 250% increase on fertilizer. We have diesel fuel is more than 100% more. Seeds are 300% more, and they are manipulating the input cost for all the farmers in this country to reduce the acres. So this year is the first time in my lifetime that I've ever reduced the amount of acreage that I grow. We've always been growing and growing and growing. And this year we actually cut our farm back to about half.
Hundreds of percent increases in fertilizer, hundreds of percent increases in energy costs, all because these globalists want to destroy the old system. The system that, by the way, has lifted millions of people out of poverty with oil and gas and nuclear energy. Over the last 100 years, poverty has plunged to its lowest levels in history. And you can thank fossil fuels for providing the machines and the power to lift people out of poverty. That's right, but they don't want to admit that.
Because I don't like to leave you on a sad note, I do have a little hope for all of us. Here we have Candace Owen talking about the climate change agenda and how they have it all wrong.
Global warming everywhere. They forced us to actually watch in health class Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. And I remember being terrified because the sea levels were rising. They told us that in 10 years, Florida was going to be underwater. They were placing bets. Florida will be underwater unless you kids, you guys at home, unless you do something. Here's what I'm going to recommend to you. It's a book called Inconvenient Facts written by Gregory Wrightstone, and it is something that completely changed my perspective on climate change. It's something that all children should read. If your children are fearful that the world is going to end, they should know that the left always promises an apocalypse. They've done it many, many times. And of course, we know the reason why. It's because they want to extract money. They want to be able to raise trillions and trillions of dollars on fear. Children are going to commit to having the government tax them into perpetuity because there's some climate crisis that they need to fix. So here are just a few, by the way, of those inconvenient facts that he lists in this book that I think are important. First and foremost, we are living in one of the coldest periods in all of Earth's history. Oops, so much for everyone telling us that global warming and carbon dioxide, which by the way is plant food, is going to make things so terrible. More CO2 means more plant growth. More CO2 helps to feed more people worldwide. The number of tornadoes is declining. Extreme heat events are declining. There has been no increase in frequency of hurricanes in recent data. Forest fires across the northern hemisphere are also decreasing. So, they shifted gears away from global warming and pushed it towards climate change because, unfortunately, in 2011, actually, the Earth started to cool a bit. So they said, we got to move. And now it's just climate change. Every time a climatic event happens, they want you to go, oh my gosh, climate change. The world is ending. It's not ending. It is not ending. There's not going to be some event other than your government attempting to grow and using children to do that. I believe it is a climate doomsday cult. And just like every doomsday cult, when they don't meet the deadline, they just transform it and go, actually, no. The doomsday is going to be a little bit later.
And there are some scientists that do not fall into this climate change urgency. And this is a contrarian belief that the World Economic Forum just can't stand. The CO2Coalition.org and Gregory Wrightstone, a geologist, believes what Candace Owen just said as well. I was so excited to hear this because I have heard that there is a climate change hoax. Listen here.
The story of an Earth that's thriving, prospering, and greening may well be the biggest untold story of our generation. That the Earth isn't plunging into a climate catastrophe should be a banner front page headline for the New York Times. Instead, they'll continue to peddle the same stories of climate catastrophe based on failed climate models. Mother Earth's doing remarkably well.
That is wonderful news, and I love to hear that. On the next episode, I will delve into more about the climate change agenda and the Great Reset, and I can't wait to give you that information as well. If you enjoyed this episode and you want to have more episodes like this one, go to truthdetectivepodcast.com to get to all my past episodes. They are informative and a lot of fun. If you want to email me, you can do that too. Email me at truthdetectivepodcast@gmail.com. I love to hear the feedback on the episodes that you have listened to, and I also love to get potential topics that I can research. I do this podcast for you, so I want to make sure that I am doing the research on those topics that you want me to do. You can also go to my YouTube page, Truth Detective with Stephanie. I have all my episodes recorded there, and I also have a couple of videos that are quite interesting. And as always, share this episode and let others know what you know. It's so important. Okay, I'll see you next time on Truth Detective. Bye-bye.